Good morning, 7 East.
Happy Friday, everybody. It is the 31st episode of Free LEPRE Radio here on May 8th. May the 8th be with you. It doesn't have the same ring as May the 4th be with you, but all the same, happy Friday. We are on the air, and if we look at our weekly calendar, this is where we made it so far. I can't believe we're already halfway through Westward Expansion. So, Free LEPRE Radio, episode 031. Today, there is no new assignment. We're just continuing on with the Erie Canal, how it works, and what it's like today. There is a Google Meet today at 12:30 to 1. We can be playing some more of the Oregon Trail if you like. I'm also going to try to find some of the other games that are in that universe, like Yukon Trail, where you got to go to Alaska. We may even do like a live competition. Everyone start out at the hardest difficulty and see how far we get during the Google Meet. Just something to consider. We'll think about it. We'll talk about it at 12:30. Also, Mega Gimkit IX today from 2 o'clock to 2:30. I'm going to be doing these now only once a week. The numbers have not been great. I guess people are getting all sick of Gimkit, so I'm only going to do it once a week now on Fridays. 2 o'clock to 2:30. I'm going to add more questions on Westward Expansion. Questions added are going to be related to the stuff that we learned this week. Now, this is the agenda for the week. Now, before I go any further, I just want to point out the grading document that is now posted on Google Classroom. I thought I gave you a very clear layout of how things are going to be graded. NI, P, and PD. I tried to be very fair about it. I figured that a PD would be like an A. An A is a 90% and above, but then I'm thinking at the same time, you're doing all of this work. It's your own responsibility. I think you should get a little bit more credit for that. So I feel like even if you're getting an 80, that's like an A effort. So I'm saying that a passing with distinction, the highest grade is going to be 80% and above on assignments. A passing grade is going to be 51 to 79 because in the rubrics it says getting most of the questions right. So most of the questions would be 51% or higher. And then 50% and below would be needs improvement. And for anything you get a needs improvement on, you can always retake. So people have already asked me about this, and I just sent out a second Google assignment. It's the same exact one. You're just basically doing corrections for it, and it bumps your grade up from a needs improvement to a passing. So Mega Gimkit IX is the first thing on our agenda, talking about the results from Mega Gimkit VIII. Second thing on our agenda, the impact of the Erie Canal and how Canal Locks work specifically. And then 3, my favorite segment, Weird News of the Week. Usually I do it on Mondays. Today I'm doing it on a Friday. So Mega Gimkit VIII, Niles won again, although this was a very close one. Jack almost beat Niles this time. But Niles is now the 7-time champion running for Mega Gimkits 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Will he be dethroned? Find out today at 2 o'clock. Maybe you can be a part of it. And that is at Mega Gimkit IX. That is today, 2 o'clock to 2:30. It's going to be probably close to 60 questions or more. I'm going to try to add 15 or so after each Gimkit. So Mega Gimkit IX. Before the year is over, we'll probably get to Mega Gimkit 15 or even later than that. So now, content for the day. We started the week talking about Oregon Trail. Oregon Trail is about 2,000 miles long. Now, why was the big journey west only considered 2,000 miles long when the country was 3,000 miles wide? You may be wondering that question. I talked about in the earlier show about how the U.S. is 3,000 miles across. Well, why is the journey only considered 2,000? Well, if we look back at the map, Independence, Missouri is considered the starting point. Why would you consider that the starting point for going across the country? The answer to that is that something gets made that makes it easy to think of the middle of the country as the starting point for the real journey out west. And that something is the Erie Canal. And here we have this old drawing how the Erie Canal would have looked in the 1800s. Not the biggest boats at the time, but today it's not home, but it's passageway to all sorts of boats, big and small, even kayaks people go into the Erie Canal with. So the Erie Canal cuts around 800 land miles out of the 3,000 miles it takes to cross the United States. So for example, let's say you wanted to go from England all the way out to Oregon. What you would do is you'd probably sail in across the Atlantic to New York. You'd take the Hudson River on a boat up the Hudson River, and then you go across the Erie Canal, end up in the Great Lakes, and after sailing through all the Great Lakes, you'll wind up in Illinois. And then you'd have to travel not too far, actually, because if we go back to the big map, from Illinois, you just have to make a shorter distance across Illinois to Independence, Missouri, and from there you can begin your real journey out west. The Erie Canal is basically a huge shortcut. Cuts 800 miles out of your journey, 800 land miles. So instead of going all the way across the land, you just sail. Now, as you saw from the video, if you did the assignment already, it was not easy to dig the full length of the canal. What you did not see a lot of is how the engineers had to solve the problem of getting a boat to go uphill with the changing elevation of the land. If the canal workers had to change direction every time there was higher ground, they would never get to Lake Erie. They would have to change direction any time there was something tall in front of them. What they did instead was to create what things are called canal locks to allow boats to go over hills and mountains. Now, they kind of show that in the video, but it may have been hard to understand, so I'm going to try to explain what they are and how they work. So first off, what is a canal lock? Well, a canal lock is simply, it's a mechanism designed to contain and change water levels to raise and lower boats in the water. You need locks if the canal is going over hills or mountains. There's no other way to get a boat over a mountain than to have these locks. Unless your boat has like rockets attached to its back end and it just shoots itself up the mountain, in which case it would be a rocket ship. What do canal locks look like? So here we have an example of a modern canal lock on the Erie Canal. So the canal lock locks the water in place to stay at a certain level, like a dam that opens and closes. So if you look at this lock carefully, you see it's kind of like a big wall. It's basically a gate. And it's closed shut, it's watertight, so if you can see in the background, the water is actually much higher than it is up front. So for a boat that's coming and wants to enter the lower part, what's going to happen is that the lock's going to allow water to spill through to make sure the water on the bottom side actually raises up to the level of the boat. That's for going up, but if we're going down, you see how this boat is entering the lock, and there's two doors behind it that close and shut. And that water in the middle is actually going to lower, so the boat is at the lower level, and it can pass through without falling or anything. That is what a canal looks like. Now, my explanation, I'm sorry, I think it was even more confusing than it would have been, but I think this GIF is actually a very good example of how it works. So if you're looking at this GIF, you basically have terrain that is a hill or mountain, and you have a canal, and the locks are the black bars that are going vertical, and as you can see, that the ship, as it's traveling, I'm going to wait for it to restart. So the ship, as it's traveling, the lock opens, it goes into a new chamber, water pours in from the high side until it raises, then it moves on to the next one, then water pours in. It's kind of like going up steps. Then once it gets all the way to the top, it goes in reverse. Water empties out into the next one, it keeps going, water empties out into the next one, it keeps going, water empties out into the flat side, and it keeps going. And the Erie Canal has a very complicated system of all these locks to get over hills and mountains, and that is how you're going to get these boats through geography that isn't flat. So to kind of give it a modern day comparison, the Erie Canal today has 57 separate locks, so 57 separate versions of these. And this is in Lockport, locks 34 and 35, so it shows you on the map, and if you're doing one of the Erie Canal cruises, which they have, you'd be going down, if you did the whole thing, you'd be going through all 57 locks. But this is the interesting thing. Using these locks, boats on the canal actually rise in elevation over 550 feet than the original level they start out in at the Hudson River. So imagine you're in the Hudson River at a certain level. At some point on your journey, you're actually going to be 550 feet higher than you are at that point. And that's all from taking the 57 locks that you need to get to a higher point. So 550 feet you actually have to be raised over the course of your journey. And this is the Erie Canal today, kind of a bird's eye view. And if you saw this and didn't know it was the Erie Canal, you would probably think it looks weird. I've never known a river that is so straight like this. This looks like it was dug by hand because it was dug by hand. So this is the Erie Canal today. And like the video said, it was like the engineering marvel of its time, an artificial river cutting across New York. Made travel a lot easier. It made New York the busiest port in the country. New York would not be what it is today, this rich, capital of American finance and trade, without the Erie Canal. That is our content for the day. Now let's take a look at some weird news. I got some good stories today. First story. Man arrested trying to quarantine on private Disney island. So I can think of worse ways to spend your quarantine than on a private Disney island. It's actually it's ingenious to me. Disneyland's probably going to be empty, or Disney World's going to be empty. They're all going to be empty. No one's allowed in them. I'm sure there's probably tons of people camped out in Cinderella's castle right now. Epcot, it's kind of you get to travel the world while not leaving your own little area. So I envy this person. Of course, it's Florida, not just because there's Disney World, but that's the kind of thing you see in Florida. People camping out in a private Disney island to escape the quarantine. Story number 2. Woman accused of calling 911 after parents cut off cell phone. Authorities say an Ohio woman was arrested for calling 911 when her parents cut off her cell phone service. Now, my question is, if they cut off her cell phone service, how did she call 911? Good question. And finally, I don't know why it says story 2 twice. Story 2 and then story 2A and then story 2B. Darth Vader enforces lockdown in the Philippine village. So apparently a local officer in the Philippines has been dressing like Darth Vader to enforce the lockdown. Speaking of lockdowns, locks, and Darth Vader, I'm sure Darth Vader could use the Force to open the locks on the Erie Canal. And apparently he's patrolling the town. He looks huge in this photo. He's patrolling the town, delivering groceries to people and telling them to stay inside. I guess he finds the lack of quarantining disturbing. That is our final story of the day, and it is also the final segment of today's episode. Have a good weekend. This is going to be Mr. LePre signing off. Talk to you next week.